love time travel anime? Me too, which is why I watched every single one so I could unequivocally decide the very best. This is not that. These are the top 5 very worst time travel anime.
5. 失われた未来を求めて
In Search of Lost Future is the single least self-aware anime I've ever seen. Case in point,
ソウさんはぼやぼやしててマイペースで存在感が薄くてこれといって取り柄はないわ。でも平凡に見えて意外と突拍子もないことを考えていたりここぞというところで行動力があったり不思議と魅力がある人よ。
I mean, on one hand, it's almost refreshing to hear an anime just flat out admit that its protagonist is the most boring, unremarkable person ever, and that things only happen around him because he's the protagonist. But on the other, when someone you're hanging out with just casually lets slip that they have a problem, the correct response is very rarely to give them a 12-episode anime and a bonus hot spring episode. In Search of the 4 Hours I'm Never Getting Back is about a girl who gets run over by a bus and all her friends build a time-traveling robot to save her, and because of world-line divergence, this anime keeps trying to be Steins Gate over and over. Yes, the amount of time that elapsed between Steins Gate and the original game is so suspiciously close to the exact amount of time it would take to conceive and produce a visual novel. I'm almost embarrassed for the developers. But the reason In Search of Better anime ultimately fails is that the person going back in time is an emotionally unavailable robot that has like 5 minutes of screen time, so we empathize with her about as well as a vacuum cleaner that you strap to googly eyes and a Tenga cup to. Not that this would have worked with any of the other characters, all more one note than a broken shamisen. I mean, it's got all the classics: the childhood friend, the feisty girl, the foreigner that speaks 50% in random English phrases with a surprisingly thick Japanese accent. And then, of course, we have Dulkun, the dull protagonist, because the paradox of having so much pussy that it's falling out of your pockets while being as unappealing to the opposite sex as possible is somehow the most relatable and believable thing for weebs. There's good ideas here, but every part of this, including the ending animation that just gives up and stops halfway through like the entire studio clocked out early to go to the soapland, just feels so lazy and derivative of other, less terrible anime. In short, In Search of a Chair and Some Rope is not just bland, but offensively bland. Maybe not quite in the running for blandest anime ever, but at the convention hall for blandness, it'd have at least a double-wide booth, and so for that, it goes right in the top of F tier.
4. パンチライン
Punchline is a clever play on the made-up word panty line if you're Japanese and have taken more than a few blows to the head. Oh, was I supposed to say something else? Like what? I'm sorry, what is this? Dude turns into a ghost and has to save the world, but it blows up every time he starts rocking a stiffy? Like, yeah, sure, that sounds amusing for about 10 seconds after this idea is introduced until we learn that he can go back in time anytime he wants as if nothing happened, because if there's anything stories have too much of, it's tension. Yeah, just go to an izakaya if the stakes are so important to you, asshole. Yet another good idea, utterly wasted by writers with not 1 ounce of talent. It's not that the show is vapid, it's that it's vapid and deliberately obtuse. It refuses to explain anything as if it thinks being complicated is interesting, except all it does is not tell you what's happening and then go, wow, this is crazy. That's not complex or confusing, that's just obtuse. Yet for some reason, it thinks it's the next coming of Steins Gate when it models time travel for us, which is literally 2 options. The options are good and bad. You don't need a fucking model, bro, what?
3. DNA2
Okay, wait, hold up. I have a feeling this next one is gonna set off YouTube's demonetization Gestapo, so just pretend I'm swearing like a schoolgirl trying to impress her older boyfriend as she gets bent over and railed behind the gym for the first time as we employ the power of tangential rhyming. DNA2 is what happens when a group of dudes successfully pitch a hilarious idea they came up with after getting blackout drunk at a karaoke bar, then spent the advance on hookers and blow before sitting down the day before the deadline and realizing that none of them know how to fucking right. I mean, you think the anime about a guy who zucks so many girls, he literally single-handedly causes the overpopulation of the world and throws the future so into chaos that the government has to go back in time and stop him from zucking 100 girls, would be an easy slam dunk, but they somehow actually screwed this up. Maybe that last part clued you into what's wrong with this though, because it's almost adorable that this anime's idea of an unimaginably large amount of sex is 100 girls. I mean, this is the first number a 14-year-old virgin throws out when he wants to impress his less intelligent friends. I'm not a virgin. In fact, I've zucked 100 girls, so there. Oh shit, he zucked 100 girls, word. And none of them go to our school, that's crazy. Now, I'm not saying this isn't a large number. Obviously, it is. But I mean, this is the mega playboy that single-handedly caused the overpopulation of the earth. This is like his Sunday morning for Bob Marley. He zucked 100 girls. You can't be serious. Like, sure, each of his offspring zucked 100 girls, and each of their offspring zucked 100 girls, and so on. But the problem is, whoever wrote this clearly can't do basic math because it only takes place 100 years in the future. Oh shit, if he zucked 100 girls, and they each zucked 100 girls, and they each zucked 100 girls, and they each zucked 100 girls. That's like, can you imagine? Oh my god. 100 million? Yes, I can. Can you not?
In 100 years, Junta Momonari's descendants will number 12,000. 6,000 of them are men.
No, you're right. I guess basic math was a little too much to expect. If it sounds like I'm a little hung up on this one point, it's because so little happens in it that we literally spend 3 episodes on a girl farting. I know that sounds funny, but trust me when I say that this entire 15-episode anime could have happened in 4, and I'm including the 3-episode OVA in here. It eventually manages to get silly when future girl Aoi, after shooting Sex Machine Junta with the fake Mega Playboy bullet, gets the real bullet and then shoots the wrong person, and then it turns out that that bullet was also wrong, and now this guy turns into a DNA vampire, and Junta has to become the Mega Playboy in order to defeat him. By the way, the Mega Playboy can teleport and also takes down the DNA vampire with one punch. See, this is the kind of zuck I was expecting to see from a show with this loose of a grasp on biology, let alone simple arithmetic. But like every girl I've ever been with, it takes a full 12 episodes to get there and then moves on right away. I guess the lesson is, in a world where hentai is taken as a serious art form, it's good to stop and ask why this wasn't hentai. And that's probably because it wasn't interesting enough to be pornography. A colossal waste of a hilarious idea and a pathetic failure for everyone involved. F.
2. 未来の未来
I honestly thought I would've liked the time travel anime that's just the word future twice, and well, unlike the rest of these, it's not objectively the worst time travel anime. It is the one I hated the most. Now, unlike every other anime I've placed in F tier, when I say this is shit, I don't mean it's incompetently written with horrible characters, because it isn't. What I mean is I'm baffled by how unfathomably bad an idea this story was in the first place, because out of all the horrible anime I watched to make this list, this is the only one that was actually physically painful to watch. Mirai no Mirai succeeds at everything it tries to do in the worst way possible, because the story is basically insufferable little shit is an insufferable little shit for an hour and a half. I almost wanted to get a vasectomy after watching this until I realized I no longer needed one because it also made my balls shrivel up in disgust. Literally the only people I can imagine liking this movie are women actively trying to get pregnant, because everyone else would just want to tear their eyes and ears out and never even so much as look at children again, let alone have them after seeing this. God damn.
スペシャルメンション
Now, before we get to the very worst time travel anime, I want to talk about one very special mention, and that's because objectively speaking, this is probably the worst one, but it's the kind of anime that's just so unbelievably bad that it's actually good. I love it and you need to watch it, and here is why.
アリス
Tell me, friends, do you ever struggle over the anime question? Do Chinese anime count as anime? Does Agretsuko count as anime? I ask this because Alice is known as the first 3D anime. Why? Just because it's Japanese? oh, never mind. Alice, no points guessing what the fuck the acronym is supposed to be, is an almost inconceivably bad film. It's usually a big red flag when you have to pirate something because you can't find anyone willing to take your money to watch something made digitally in an era when that's literally free. But it became apparent why basically the instant I turned it on.
The best thing you can do is rest. Let's go back.
Not only does it look like a bad PS2 game, despite coming out 5 years after Toy Story, the sound mixing is hilariously bad. I can't even count the number of pops and mouth clicks I heard in the audio. My YouTube videos have better audio than this, and I'm an autistic weeaboo that spent the last 6 months watching every time travel anime ever made. Oh, big surprise, an anime with a terrible dub come the predictable comments. Well, asshole, the reason I bring this up is because I tried watching the Japanese first, and it's literally worse. This anime sucks. What? I said this anime sucks. I'm sorry. I can't give you extremely bad sound mixing. Yeah, somehow the dub uses the same 2 actors doing different voices for every single character, or at least that's what it sounds like. I have no idea who dubbed this because the only English version I could find is a pirated copy that cuts out before the credits, and so far, no one has stepped up to take responsibility for this, and yet it's somehow still better than the Japanese, although the translation is fucked.
History's youngest astronaut, and also the world's greatest Japanese teen idol.
I was tempted to put Alice in its own tier because, well, it's... what's the word?
Failure!
It's exploding truck full of popcorn and fireworks kind of failure, rather than the traditional anime masturbating on a train kind of failure. So I'm not going to spoil the plot because you actually kind of have to see this, but just know that it involves time traveling to capture Hitler and take over the world instead of time traveling, and also the characters hack so hard they almost die. Can you guess when this was made?
1. アイランド
Moving on to the actual worst time travel anime, Island. It's one thing for an anime to be chock full of generic waifu bullshit, and it's another when it does this because it thinks you're too stupid for anything else. Like, I shit you not, there's a moment 3 episodes into Island where the main character pulls out a diary of everything that's happened so far and just throws up his hands and is like, wow, the plot is so confusing, isn't it? Bitch, we're not even an hour in and you've spent 40 minutes showing me underage girls in bikinis. What could possibly be confusing? Not that there's anything inherently wrong with an anime calling you stupid, it's just that being smart itself is kind of a prerequisite, and this just lays down an hour of the most boring, lazy, generic writing I've ever seen before bending over and sucking its own dick. Like, the first thing that happens in this anime is a girl falling on the main character's naked crotch. As a general rule, if this is how an anime starts, run far away. Even if it's somehow still good, you'll only be disappointed. So the plot basically is this dude, Setsuna, washes up on a beach, again, naked, with no memories, only a vague feeling that he's supposed to save a girl. Oh, and also kill someone, which is the one idea that saves this from being the single most generic thing I have ever seen. But any tension it ever had just completely goes out the window with a protagonist who's so dull he barely even reacts to anything going on around him. When the lolly tries to kill him, he just kinda goes, eh, and shrugs it off before stumbling upon the basement where he opens a random book to find a note saying that he has to die. And then he just kind of goes off to bed without a care like it's Stripper Tuesday. How does your character receive 2 death threats in 1 episode and not bat an eye? And then, and you're not gonna believe this, but you know the thing about him killing someone? The one actually interesting detail about the plot? Turns out, that was a lie. I'm serious, it just casually discards this halfway through and is like, oh yeah, so that's not a thing. Who the hell wrote this? Apparently, not anyone who cares, because halfway through, it turns into an entirely different anime that ends with Setsuna fucking a 13. No, oh my god, no, burn it down, no, shit. But thought it was weird that he's supposed to be 20 when all the girls are 16? Yeah, no, you were wrong, idiot. The saddest part is that Island has good ideas, but then it just kind of casts them all aside for whatever this bullshit is. Like, in literally the last episode, it just casually brings up that time travel doesn't exist, and all the characters are instead being frozen in time and waking up in the future, but it feels like the past because the world is on a series of repeating loops. That's interesting, that's genuinely interesting, but then it immediately forgets about it and the show just ends. Huh? Oh, and where did Setsuna come from in the first place? Apparently we forgot about this one too. It's actually impressive just how thoroughly this story manages to go absolutely nowhere. Easily one of the most appallingly bad anime I've ever seen. F.
なお
So while these were the top 5 very worst time travel anime, there still were lots and lots and lots of very terrible anime to rip on, and if you'd like to see that, you should check out my full tier list. As always, thank you so much for your time, friends, and I'll see you in the next video.